Okay, we're live now. Great. Okay, folks. My name's Ryan. I don't know if we have some new viewers here, but I'm the founder of Amezmo. We're a simple PHP hosting solution for developers, freelancers, and agencies. And it's a platform that makes it really easy to start hosting a new PHP application or an existing application. So, for example, lots of developers go on to DigitalOcean or AWS and they will create a new Ubuntu server or Linux server and then spend about 2 hours configuring it and provisioning it to be able to run their application. Or they'll use Forge or another provisioning software. I know there's a lot of them out there. But Amezmo aims to be like the simple, less friction platform to import your code and just start hosting your site. So in this video today, I'm going to deploy a simple CraftCMS application. And this is a brand new CraftCMS application that I created with Composer. And it's located on GitHub at github.com/amezmo/CraftCMS-demo. So let's just wait a few minutes just to see if we get any more viewers coming in. Okay, it looks like we got a few people. Hey everyone, if you just joined, haven't started the demo yet, but I just kind of gave a rundown of what Amezmo is and what the goal of the platform is. So if your video is a little blurry, just make sure you're doing 720p. I'm recording at a 1280 by 800 resolution, and I don't know, YouTube sometimes likes to make it a little different. But I'm going to go ahead with the demo now. So as I was saying earlier, Amezmo is the simplest platform to run your PHP applications because we aim to eliminate the configuration required to run a production-ready PHP application. So I actually host the blog.amezmo.com at Amezmo, and this is interesting. Error established in database connection. Okay, so we're not going to do this, but we're going to go ahead with the demo. So as I was saying earlier on Twitter, we're going to import a CraftCMS application, and this application is located on github.com/amezmo/demo.amezmo.com. No, actually, it's not demo. It's CraftCMS demo. So it really takes about 3 minutes, and it's going to be a very short video because it doesn't take that long. So we first add the name, and that's just a host name. And then we will add the domain name as demo.amezmo.com. I don't know if CraftCMS supports 7.4 yet, so I haven't used the newest version. But what happens here is that once we provide the configuration, we tell the Amezmo backend to spin up a new container instance that has the latest version of PHP 7.2, MySQL, Redis, and a bunch of other things like supervisor in order to control some background workers. And once this instance gets launched, it only takes a few seconds. Then we'll be prompted to import our code from Git. And we can use 3 providers, but today I'm using GitHub. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the Git wizard. And optionally, we can execute some code at a certain step of the deployment process. But this feature is not really necessary because we can automatically install Composer packages at deploy time. So as I was saying earlier, the demo is called CraftCMS demo, and it's just a standard Composer CraftCMS install. And this is where CraftCMS especially comes in to Amezmo, because we have an application type. And if we select CraftCMS, then some pre-configuration parameters get set by default, so the programmer or user doesn't have to go in and figure out why it's not working on Amezmo. You know, like, why isn't it working? Because we want to eliminate all the clicks and all the custom configuration you have to do to host your site in Amezmo. I know Heroku and some other providers require you to import like a custom type of file, especially for Heroku or what have you. But Amezmo aims to be the non-vendor lock-in platform. So sure, you can come here and host your code. That's great. But nothing's really tying you into the platform. There's no proprietary configuration or things like that. So, and a few things are happening here on the initial import. First, a webhook is created at GitHub. Second, a deploy key is created as well. This deploy key is read-only, so Amezmo has access to run a git pull on your repo upon you doing git push. And now we're running the Composer install. And Node.js is also supported too if you have some npm packages. Personally, I always build my production assets on my laptop. I don't build them at deploy time and things like that. So this is the deployment output. And we have something called a post-deployment health check, and obviously it failed now because CraftCMS isn't installed. So if we go to our site, we get this weird ye error, but I wish CraftCMS would redirect to install upon itself recognizing that it hasn't been installed yet, but that's another day. So if you installed CraftCMS before, you'd probably know that it's going to ask you for like database credentials and all of those things. But this is interesting because we're automatically getting to the install page and I just have to create my username and password. And I'll show you how that's accomplished soon. Yeah, so as we can see here, this is a fresh CraftCMS site, and it didn't require any customization in terms of configuration. So how did that wizard step get skipped? Well, earlier we picked CraftCMS as the application type, and then Amezmo will automatically generate the correct and CraftCMS specific environment variables, such as security key. For example, if you were to import a CraftCMS application without a security key, you would get a 500 error because CraftCMS would bail out earlier in the request cycle, and it's a little confusing if you haven't, if you don't know exactly how CraftCMS uses that security key type configuration. I had a customer that Amezmo has a customer that uses CraftCMS, and they were confused why the application was just a white screen, and then we realized that the security key wasn't set. So this is a quality of life feature that I aim to provide with Amezmo, right? I don't want people to have to think why it's not working, right? It works on my local computer, so why doesn't it work on Amezmo? But, this is for a brand new Craft application. If you have an existing Craft application, you can always import that as well. And I imagine you'll have a database. So one great feature about Amezmo is that we have the import feature, backup and restore, and automated backups with optionally S3 capable storage. So if you have an S3 account, you can automatically move those backups to your S3 offline storage so they're not tied to the Amezmo platform. And I guess I'll just go through a couple more things that aren't CraftCMS specific, but might be interesting, is that we can connect to the database remotely over SSL. So if you've used DigitalOcean's managed database before, you'll know that they advocate using SSL to connect to the database remotely if you don't have SSH. Well, you could have SSH, but usually you're doing an interactive SSH session when you're connecting to the MySQL server. And furthermore, like in terms of the features for Amezmo, there's workers, which are daemons, right? You can run your background processes on Amezmo, and Amezmo will show you the logs and other things like log rotation and in dashboard logs, blah, blah, blah. But one of the more useful features that you could do with workers is run a WebSocket server. So if you see this route and bind request thing, if you pick your domain and then click this background process runs a WebSocket server, then all the requests to that domain will go to your background process, and Nginx configuration that is required to run a WebSocket server is automatically configured for you. So you don't have to spend time or effort or energy figuring that out. So it looks like we have a few people watching. If no one saw the beginning, I imported a CraftCMS application from GitHub, github.com/amezmo/CraftCMS demo. And I did it in a few clicks. But, one thing interesting one useful thing that developers usually have is alternate environments. So a production environment and then a feature environment or a staging environment, blah, blah, blah. And with Amezmo, you can have two different environments. So for example, if I have a development branch, I could import an alternative GitHub repo and use a different target deployment branch for this particular application. I won't do that today, that'll be another time, but that's always an option for the developer, right? And you also get a private domain for each of your applications. So for example, if you don't have a top level domain yet for your client or yourself even, you can always use the app domain, we call it. And that is just an auto-generated domain name that is available to use. And it's cool because when you import a second Git repo, you also get a second app domain. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I know this is kind of short, but I know there's a few people talking. So if anyone wants to chat in the chat box, let's chat. It'd be awesome to answer any questions that anyone has about the platform, about Amezmo, about CraftCMS specific code, about myself. I can tell you about me. So I'll just tell everyone about a little bit about myself. So I've been doing PHP for a while. It's my first language ever. It has a special place in my heart. And these days I do .NET, I do PHP, I do Python. The Amezmo backend is actually written in Python, but the front end's in PHP. But I was always interested in programming languages. I actually have my own language called Como. It's on GitHub, github.com/ComoLang, or you go to github.com/rmccullough and you can see my repositories. I was always interested in dynamic programming languages and dynamically typed code, for example, like JavaScript and PHP. And with that interest, I actually contributed a little bit to the PHP runtime. Not anything crazy like the VM or anything, but I tried to give back to the community a little bit by trying to fix a few bugs. I think I have 1 or 2 bugs that was actually merged by Nikki C. It was something to do with one of the strings coming back. I don't remember exactly, but it's on GitHub. And I also was a big fan of memcached. So that was really popular probably, I don't know, 8 years ago, maybe 6, but I'm sure everyone remembers memcached. It was like the de facto way to catch things. But with Redis being more popular, no one really recommends memcache these days. But I really love memcache for the simplicity of it, right? Just one hash table, everything's a string. And I contributed a little bit to that, but it's nothing to brag about. Just wanted to show you guys my kind of a little bit of my background. So in really the value out of Amezmo is the time it takes you, or the time it saves you when you want to host or deploy a PHP application. So you could easily do all these things from scratch, right? You can get a Linode instance or a DigitalOcean instance or AWS, but how much time are you going to spend configuring those things and maintaining it? For example, Amezmo will automatically update the PHP patch releases for you. So if there's a security update with PHP, you'll get it automatically. And lots of these things are really easy to implement, like supervisor D or, let's encrypt domain validation. But during the day, do you have time to do that? Or does your client want you to spend time doing that? I don't know. Could you charge them like a hosting fee and then use Amezmo as the back-end provider? Probably, right? So it's really the time it saves you. Okay, we got a question from Jason McAllister. Yeah, so how is switching PHP versions? Craft supports PHP 7.4. So as of today, you can't switch the PHP version at runtime or, at instance creation time. I mean runtime as in like once the instance has already been created, PHP version can't be switched, but that is only a issue with the dashboard. The actual container supports all long-term stable release versions of PHP. So PHP 7.2, PHP 7.1, 7.4. Quickly, we're going to be able to switch PHP versions from the dashboard. For example, if you want to switch to PHP 7.4, you will be able to do that from the dashboard. But right now, you can use PHP 7.4 in a worker command, for example, because the actual executable is called PHP 7.4. But switching PHP versions will be supported soon. But the backing container, because Amezmo runs on containers, right? Docker containers, it has PHP 7.4 installed already. So it's not really a big deal if you want to use 7.4. So we can go ahead and let's just launch a 7.4 instance then, since we're already here. Yeah, recently we moved into different regions, right? Earlier we were just in North America and Ohio, but the instance data center on AWS was located in Ohio, but now we have a location in London and Sydney. And, that's AWS's data centers because we're backed by AWS. I didn't physically open up a data center in those places, but that would be great if I could. I had a friend ask me, he's like, well, what's limiting you from opening up a data center in, for example, Jordan or some other country where AWS didn't have a data center? And I said, well, I probably would be capable of doing that if I want to dedicate a couple years of my life to researching regulatory rules and laws and things like that. So, and I thought that was funny that he asked that. And that's part of the value add of AWS, right? I mean, they're literally located all across the world and they charge for that, right? That's definitely what you're paying for. So soon we're going to be able to change the PHP version from the dashboard. That was something that is in my backlog, but I haven't done it yet. Because it's so easy just to launch a new instance if you're just experimenting that I didn't prioritize that feature. Yeah, so installing additional PHP extensions. That is another question from Jason, sorry, I'm a little bad on talking today. So that isn't supported directly, but it's something that you can do, right? All of the common extensions that you'll need are installed by default to run like the common PHP framework applications. But if you need a custom extension or something, I had a client ask me if he could install, I think it's some C-based MVC PHP framework. I forget what it's called, but it's written in C as a Zend extension, and that's not installed. That wasn't installed by default because that's such a niche thing. But if PHP extensions are needed custom, then it's definitely possible to do, right? It's not limited. So here I'm selecting the CraftCMS dropdown. And what does that do? That just sets a few configuration items for you as a developer so you don't have to spend time configuring things. Like, Jason, which PHP extensions would you be interested in that aren't the CraftCMS required extensions? Like a custom extension that you wrote in C? So yeah, we have the deployment output here, and let's go to the demo. So this is the default entry point for the Yi application slash CraftCMS application, but we'd have to install it because it is the first time that we have run this application. So we go to install Craft, got it. And why are we seeing just the create your account screen? Why aren't we seeing the database screen? Well, that's because Amezmo already created the variables for you that CraftCMS will read, right? It's just removing the friction associated with like starting a new site or importing an existing site. So in this demo, I'm going to go to the PHP settings just so we can see, but I want to answer Jason's question first. What's available on the Docker PHP image, or are all extensions installed by default? Okay, great question. Let's just go check it out. So if we go to, oh, that's not the right one. iTerm 2. So it is something we can check out directly in the PHP image. Oh, I have to add my public key. I'll just add this public key real quick. And that's something else you get with Amezmo SSH access. It's not root access, but it's something you can do. Yeah, I know that's not the right way to spell CraftCMS, but we'll do it. Okay, cool. We're in SSH. So let's see. What's the command for PHP? So I'll show you the PHP 7.4. There you go. Right now, just to go in, show you how it's there. They don't have the help. Is it just H? Okay, yeah. So we're on PHP 7.4. Oh, if I needed to install the Mongo extension for some crazy reason, how would I do that on Amezmo? Well, you just have to reach out to support, and I would install it for you, and possibly provide a drop-down menu item in the future, depending on, the need. But that's a great question. How common is that? I don't know. But the PDO extension, I think, supports. Oh no, it doesn't support Mongo, does it? It's a great question. Right now, it's not supported. Like, simply, it's not supported, but it's not like we couldn't support it. It's not really a limitation from a I'm not going to do it point of view, but if CraftCMS needed Mongo, like right now, then this demo would kind of suck because Mongo isn't available. I think in Heroku you can do that, right? You can tell Heroku that it should have these extensions, and you'd have to write in that configuration file. So to show the actual PHP extensions, I'll do it from a different I actually have a repo that will show you all the PHP configuration. But yeah, I definitely want to look into this custom extension thing, Jason. It's not something I don't want to do. It's just right now we can't support that, like, as of today, because it's not in the dashboard. But it's not a feature that isn't something that we can't do because we're not capable of writing it. But that's kind of a limitation right now in the dashboard, right? We can't do MongoDB extensions. As an example, I know that was just your example, but like, for example, if we want to do something else, I forget other PHP extensions that they have. But I know Composer has an entry like called require ext, and in there lots of times extensions are written with the version. So I was possibly thinking about reading that configuration upon import. Because something I don't want to do is have a custom Amezmo specific configuration file. But for automation purposes, like in the future when Amezmo gets an API, it would be great. Yeah, utilities info. Okay. Yeah, let's check that out. I know I was meaning to do that earlier. Yeah, we're going to go to utilities, PHP info. Yeah, and I ran this audit earlier, and everything looks good. It seems like Craft is really simple to run. Doesn't need anything crazy. Like, and PHP FPM gets 256 megabytes per worker, depending on your tier, right? The free tier doesn't do that, but all the standard tiers do. And you guys can go to this too now, like demo.amezmo.com, and go check it out. I think I think it's just admin password. So as I was saying earlier too, this is the demo. So let me put this in. So this PHP 7.4 PHP info command yeah, Mongo's not supported. But other things that are configured for you on Amezmo is like upload. So for example, PHP has a limit of like 120 megabytes or something. But Amezmo has configured that by default to be 512 megabytes, and all the Nginx required configuration and PHP ini and PHP FPM entries have been configured for the developer and instance by default. So there's no surprises on, we can upload a file. But in my personal experience, once you're getting past 512 MB, you should really start chunking things. For example, like Amezmo's backup restore feature, when you import your database file like .sql, it's not just going to place that file on the Amezmo server by default, right? It's going to chunk the upload so we don't get issues, for example, with Cloudflare and things like that. I think that's ultimately always best practice to do, once you're getting past a certain size of file. And another thing with CraftCMS that looks great is this fast CGI caching plugin. I know it's written by Andrew Welch and his company. That's a really nice plugin, and I'm thinking about implementing that for Amezmo too. The fast CGI support, fast CGI caching. It doesn't look like it's going to be that challenging, and if it can provide a performance increase for users of Amezmo, then it's definitely going to be a benefit. So I think that's all I have. Unless there's any more questions, it was really great to be able to show the CraftCMS demo and show you how easy it is to start importing a site and the little things that Amezmo does for you by default, so you don't have to spend time wondering why it's not working. Because think about it, if you were to do this on DigitalOcean, how many hours would it take you right now to open up a DigitalOcean terminal and deploy a CraftCMS application? Probably an hour, right? I mean, depending on if you have your collection of bash scripts and you're not using Forge. I know Forge is a great tool. It's a great tool to use, right? But sometimes you don't want to use Forge, right? Sometimes you want something even simpler, right? Because Forge is like $12 a month, I think, and you still have to mess with Forge, right? Your server isn't just automatically maintained for you, right? Because Forge gives you that nice little like leap, right? But you still are required to maintain it, right? Because you'll still need to update PHP and probably do some maintenance. So Amezmo is really locked down in the sense that you can't really shoot yourself in the foot. And if you do, you can always just destroy your instance and then reboot it, because it's very portable in that sense that things are configured and you can't really break it. And that's always great. I see that as an advantage rather than being able to have full control of the system and being able to change things that you might need to change. But to support the customization, the PHP extension feature is definitely going to be implemented soon. And changing the PHP runtime versions is something that's been on my backlog for a while, and it's really interesting. We're getting PHP 8 soon, and we do have the RC1 version of PHP 8, I think, released. Not Amezmo, but it is available for download, and I actually have messed around with it, and I'm thinking about offering that option on Amezmo, but it's going to take a little bit of time because it's not in the Ubuntu package manager yet. But for experimental purposes, it might be something I do soon. Okay, I'll just leave a couple more minutes for last minute questions, and then I think that'll be it. I got a couple new followers on Twitter from this. Wow, cool. I guess I'll just share with you how I'm doing this screencast. I'm using OBS, and I have two monitors. I have an LG Ultrafine to the right of me, and I have my laptop here, and the laptop is set at a resolution of 1280 by 800, and OBS is providing the screen flow type program, but OBS is made for streaming more than recording. And this microphone is SM58, and it's plugged into a Scarlett Focusrite, and that's pretty much it. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. Seriously, I really appreciate it. It was really awesome to be able to showcase Amezmo and the CraftCMS application, right? I really love the CraftCMS community. I'm a huge fan of CraftCMS myself, and what I'm looking for is I'm trying to find a use case for CraftCMS. And I know that's probably a really dumb question from your point of view, but I'm trying to find a great use case. Like, why would I need a content management system, right? What is a common use case for a content management system? And I'm not going to ask why can't I just use WordPress. I know the advantages of a content management system from like a human point of view, but how powerful is it? Can I create like custom forms and right? Like, it's just an interesting thing that I've been searching for, and I haven't done like hours of research, right? But it's like a question that I think is a good question for like beginners to CMSs, and I hope to use CraftCMS personally. I did try to use it as a blog system, but I'm trying to find that use case for a CMS. I don't use CMS personally, right? Outside of the context of CraftCMS or PHP, but it's great. I love the CraftCMS community. It's a huge community, right? You think with PHP, there's just like Laravel, right? If you're in the Laravel bubble, then you'll just see it's like, oh, there's other PHP communities like the E framework and Zen framework. I know they changed the name, but there's CraftCMS. What? Wow, that's a whole nother community. And there's a lot of sub communities of PHP, and I think it's healthy for PHP developers to understand that there is more than one way to do something, right? Yi is a great framework. I think it's one of the first frameworks. Not first, but it definitely was around during the CodeIgniter time before Laravel became very popular, as well as Symfony. Symfony was around for a while. I remember Symfony during the CodeIgniter days, but yeah, I don't know what happened to CodeIgniter, but I think it's still maintained. I do have an old CodeIgniter app that would be interesting to show you at another time. It's not online, but it's like the first PHP application that I made. It's interesting. Yeah, I'll show you right here. It's called Boomin Audio, and this is something I keep around just for legacy purposes, and it's really great to read old code. If you haven't read your old code, you should go read it. All right, guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate everyone. And if you want to try Amezmo, just let me know. I know there's no free trial currently because we have the free tier. But if you're thinking about it and you don't want to really like pay for it yet, just let me know and I can give you like a 30-day trial on the 512 MB instance, or the other type of instances. Not a problem for me. I would love to illustrate the value I believe it provides for you. All right, thanks guys. Bye.